Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights. So today we have Dave and Amy Byers. Thank you guys both for being here and coming to the studio to talk through it all today with us. So guys, Dave, Amy, if you want to just say hello and we'll get started.
Hi. Good.
Hi, I'm Dave Byers,
Yeah.
Slicker Trucking.
Yep.
Amy Byers, Slicker Trucking.
Yeah. And I think really what we're going to dive into is who Slicker Trucking really is today and what it's like to go from the smallest you can be in FedEx to as large as you all have gotten. So let's go back to the beginning. I think this was before Amy was even in the picture. So Dave,
Background.
Before FedEx, were you even, was that your first kind of trucking logistics experience at all?
Well, I grew up. My uncle owned a trucking company, so I knew a little bit just from being around him.
Yeah.
But
did he ever make you drive early, or
no,
you were on the road at 12?
I was young.
Yeah.
So we went to the garage on the weekends, and we would just play. My cousin and I, we would just hang out while our dads were working on trucks and kind of running that fleet. So over the years, we just kind of grew interest in it. So when I was older, I needed to go to college, so I went to Ohio State. Needed a job while I worked at Ohio State, so I went to FedEx and was a package handler.
Okay.
And then from package handling, I became a switcher in the yard.
Package handler and switcher, what are those for people who have never heard of those?
Package handler, you unload the trailers. Mm-hmm. Just unload every day. And then eventually, I call it a promotion.
Yeah.
But I became a switcher, which then you back the trailers up to the unload doors.
Got it.
For them to be unloaded.
Yeah, so you were in every part of the bottom level of kind of how the packages get out the door from the beginning.
Yeah. And then from there, finished school, need to find a job.
Yeah.
It was around 2006, so the job industry was kind of in the dumps.
Yeah.
So the FedEx came to me and said, "Hey, we need some help with delivery for Christmas. Are you interested? You have to move to Cleveland and and do that."
Yeah.
So I packed a bag, moved to Cleveland, and I did it for Christmas.
Oh,
but I loved it.
So that was your first driving job, really, with FedEx? Was they threw you in at peak at Christmas?
Yes.
Tell them about the training and credential process with that, because it's way different today.
Yeah, it was a couple week process to get trained through that.
Okay.
But it was. It was great. I drove for a contractor at first. At that time,
So
there was a rule that you had to
contractors.
drive for a year before you could own your own route.
Oh, okay.
So
that's different too.
So I did it for Christmas. I really enjoyed it. So I stayed. Decided I was going to work for a year and then try to get my own route.
Okay.
So that's what I did. Drove for a year. Then I bought my first route.
Okay.
And
was it the same area, or did you have to move again?
Different area. I stayed where I lived, but I moved routes.
Okay.
So I moved a little bit farther
Same
north
hub
with the
area.
route.
Yeah.
But same terminal. And I picked, there was an older gentleman, had some health issues, needed to get out, ready to retire. So I swooped in and grabbed it. I was 23 years old at the time. So it worked out great. And then from there, the Slicker Trucking started.
Yeah. So you were at one route. Was that at a time where, did anybody else even own a bunch of different routes, or was it still basically one, maybe two route people?
At that time, everyone was a single van contractor.
Okay.
One man, one van.
Yeah.
That's what we called it.
Yeah.
So it was the whole terminal full of contractors.
Oh, yeah.
There was one contractor that had multiple routes.
Okay.
And everyone looked at him like he was crazy.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't even maybe a year later, I had the opportunity to purchase a second route. Mm-hmm. So Amy and I talked about it, and we decided, we should probably do it. So that's when we started the multi-van kind of model, which it wasn't real popular then, but I knew the internet was starting to boom, online sales, free shipping. It might take a day longer than going to the big box stores.
eBay was super popular.
Yeah.
eBay was booming.
Yeah.
So I knew shipping was where it was at. So if I was in it early, that it had potential to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, employees were 1099.
Oh, yeah.
And we were an LLC.
Okay.
So it was completely, all those regulations kind of came
Those
later.
came later.
So it was super easy to just jump in outside of that 1 year mandate.
Well, you say easy, but no one else was doing, had one other person doing multi-route operations.
Right.
And this is like 20 years ago. It's crazy how much this industry has changed just in that amount of time, of where you would think it's impossible to do more than one, or like, man, that guy's crazy because he's got 2 employees.
Right.
Yeah. So I know you said you kind of were seeing ahead to where you thought e-commerce was going, but how hard was it to actually step out and figure out how to do anything at scale when no one is and no one's helping you do it?
It was tough because what happened, I drove every day still.
Yeah.
So if one of my drivers called off, what was I going to do?
Yeah.
I would have to run 2 routes that day, or I'd have to beg him to maybe come in if he wasn't feeling well and try to get what he could done, and then I would do my route, then go help him with his route, or whatever that looked like. But we had to get the packages delivered every day. So whatever that took, we had to do it. And it wasn't at a place that we could hire part-time drivers or have spare trucks. If you owned the truck, you had it on the road. You ran it every day. And the trucks were way smaller then, so we were running a lot smaller, cargo vans and smaller style trucks. So sometimes I would have to make 2 trips to the terminal to load the packages up to get them out where they went, because it was just the business model was kind of just getting developed.
Yeah, and it'd be crazy today if you try to tell a driver that you got to finish your route and turn around and go back and do another route.
Today, when he used to drive, we liken this when we try to explain it to even FedEx going forward as to how things have changed. He had, I think the biggest thing he would have was maybe 1 tire, just one, not a whole set, not a whole business full, maybe blinds like that go on your kitchen or dining room, the longer ones. Outdoor carpets for, patio, not patio furniture, but maybe an umbrella. And maybe a 5 or 10 gallon bucket of pool chemicals. It was like the heaviest. Everything else was the size of a shoebox for the most part. 208, stops out of a 1,500 or 2,500 cargo van. It's unheard of today because the boxes are just
it's impossible.
Large.
Yeah, that's like out of a van, you're not doing over 200 stops. Yeah.
And I remember, en route, if I saw a van for sale, I would always stop and look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you always needed something. And you always had, like, your gears are always turning. You're like, if I had that spare van,
what could I do?
I could just leave it sit, or I could help somebody else, or I could put a driver in it and get those wheels spinning. Yeah. So we did that a lot. And, we didn't own our own scanners. There was none of that. The routing software they printed it for you every day, so you knew all your stops and everywhere you were headed. So it was actually a lot different than it is now. But it's transitioned over time, which it has to. It has to evolve.
Things have to change. Yeah. And was there much resistance as you guys continued to try to grow? Did you feel yourself as kind of the outlier trying to do everything different than everyone else at that time?
Yeah, I would say so. We kind of were blazing a trail of our own. And what happened in that terminal as we started to grow, we had a really good zip code that was booming.
Yep.
So they were building housing development. So we saw 2 kinds of growth. We saw more houses getting built, as well as us picking up accounts to give us more volume in those areas. So that was super cool to see grow. So our 1 truck, and now it was 1 truck then. It's got to be 12 trucks now. So that growth we've seen.
Yeah.
But we've also, we purchased a contractor that had, back then he had 5 routes, and he wanted out. He was commuting pretty far to get to the terminal, and he was having trouble around the business. So he approached us, asked if we were interested in it. We were. So we purchased that, and that kind of really sped that process up of the growth, because we went from 3 routes to 8 or 9 routes quick, which was unheard of out of the terminal side, because everyone was still single van, or maybe 2 or 3 at that point. But
and shortly after that, they did move to you had to be multi-van. So then all the single guys were kind of merging up and teaming up together to make sure that they were 2 or more. Yeah. And then there was a change shortly after that where you had to be contiguous. So if you had areas up north, you kind of had to trade and move so that everything was touching. And then they had a minimum, shortly after that even, they had a minimum stop count. So you had to be X amount of stops.
And then touching.
So
I was creative with some deals that we made. At the time, everyone thought I was crazy, but I would trade 2 routes for 1, 2 of my routes for 1, because it made sense to everybody. And I knew that the growth was going to be on the one that I was going to trade. It might have been
1 good zip for 2.
But
2 doesn't necessarily mean 1.
At the time, it might not have been, that populated. But now that one route is probably 5 routes.
Yeah.
In the matter of 5-6 years, it's evolved into that.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I think about all territories now, all territories are basically contiguous. Everybody's multi-route ownership now.
Overlapped.
But yeah, overlapped. Yeah, and that was a whole probably challenge that you had to go through later. But yeah, you think about it. That contiguous problem, I didn't even really process until now, is because everybody was single van. So once they had to combine, it just became a whole mess, I'm sure, for years.
Well, you combined with the guy that was next to you on the dock, not next to you in geography.
Yeah, you didn't look at the zip
Or the guy
codes.
that you liked or you could tolerate the best, right? Had the same business philosophies as you. And that had nothing to do with best. And I guess that was FedEx's way back then of talking about efficiency, right? Is that it doesn't sound smart to run from this area and travel across town 30 miles to help, your partner.
Yeah.
When they should all be next to each other, and then you could build sup routes in between and things like that. So they were always kind of thinking,
trying to figure it out,
trying to figure it out for us.
Yeah. So at that point, you're at what, like, you said 6 routes or 8 routes, and you're still growing. How does Amy feel about the business at this point?
She's good. She's doing her thing. She's in corporate America. She's helping me put the paperwork in place to continue to grow.
We're still kind of hands off.
Still hands off.
I got a full-time job.
Yes, she's hands off.
Yeah.
We're growing it. I have kind of 2 clusters. So one real tight cluster that's an hour away from the other cluster. So I'm running kind of 2 big chunks. It keeps growing. More routes are growing. And then I was approached about a line haul opportunity.
Okay.
And hey, we know your background. We know that the trucking thing.
Yeah.
It seems like you're pretty good at it.
At least familiar, which is probably more than most.
You were a switcher at the hub, so you have we kind of think you know what you're doing, or at least you make it look like you do. Would you be interested to maybe try line haul?
Yeah.
And I said sure. So I talked to Amy about it, and she said we could try it.
Yeah.
So we said we'll try it. I didn't have my CDL.
Oh wow. Okay.
So we applied for it. We didn't get it. They didn't give us the, it was a free opportunity. We didn't get the run. So next run came available, and I poured it on hard that we'll make it work. We'll figure it out. We will not let it fail. We'll be reliable. We'll be good. Even though I don't have my CDL, I will find someone that will have the passion to do it. So we got that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were awarded that one. We bought a truck, hired a driver, put him in the truck, and we ran our butts off. And we ran anything they would let us do.
Yeah.
And every day I would go into the line haul office and I'd say, any extra work? I ask every single day.
Yeah.
And I'm not, that's no sarcasm at all.
Yeah.
Every single day I was in that office. Anything extra
They got sick of you? It's like, Dave's here again.
So you can imagine though what that day looks like, because he's now just out of a truck.
Yeah.
On the P&D side, but still the BC. So he's dispatching. We had one other manager, but he's dispatching every day from the top of the day, right, until 5. And then after dispatch, so after 10 o'clock maybe, he's flying over to the line haul office, which is at a different terminal.
Yeah.
12 miles away, but still at a different terminal, asking all these questions, and then also having to wait until the night line haul. So he was trying to get city work. It was a night run, too. And then also a night run. So
but I would try to get something on the front end of it.
What that timeline looks like now that we went from, kind of what was easier that we were comfortable with to now this 24/7.
Yeah, because it's not like, when you were a driver, it was still it's not like it's an easy day. It's a physical day. This is a physical job, but it was a normal hour job. Yeah. And then you add 2, and then you're like, okay, now I'm trying to, I might be doing 2 routes myself some days to try to cover it. And now you're at the point where it's like, all I think about is FedEx. So I think it's, we talk always about how the models change, and maybe there's more, there might have been more different growth opportunities back then than there are now. But I think it's really important to emphasize that it's not like you guys just walked into these opportunities over the years. Those are FedEx years where you spent, all your time, all your energy growing and improving and finding ways to make this work over the years.
I mean, this conversation, he's already at 9 years in.
Yeah.
Right? Just to kind of put that in perspective. That didn't just, that kind of, and then I got another one, and then I got another one. Then that
it
wasn't,
sounds easy, but
it wasn't like, it wasn't in like
day.
2007 all that happened.
Yeah.
Now we're at like 2016, right? When this kind of change is happening.
Yeah.
So we had the one. We hired a driver, did excellent. They posted another run. We applied for it. We were awarded that one as well. And this was maybe 3 months after the first one.
I'll interrupt real quick. Also, contingency just started on P&D.
For the first time?
For the first time at this exact moment.
Yeah, so I was managing that too.
Yeah.
So rewind for a quick second. I was going into the line haul office every morning. I would dispatch P&D, then go to the line haul office.
Yeah.
Begging, anything extra for us, anything extra. No. Finally, one day, somebody's truck was broke down. They said, can you grab this before you run line haul tonight? I said, sure, my driver would love to do it. So I called him, hey, I need you to do this. I need you to do it. So we did it. Back to the window. Sorry, don't have anything. A week later, truck issue somewhere else. Sure, can you grab this for us? And I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Finally, he had a spot every single day. Something came available, new shipper, and they said, do you want this? Sure, we'll take it. So that's how we started to evolve that. And then with the second truck, the same thing happened. Hey, this guy leaves later. Would he be willing to come in a little early and help with this? So that really opened the door by our eagerness to help and be included.
Yeah.
It ended up being just awesome. So from there, we had those two running. Amy, I talked about it. I said, I should go get my CDL.
Okay.
I should have it. I should be able to drive our trucks to the mechanic shops. I should be able to go get tires. We don't have an outlet for that.
Yeah.
And I think I could do it. So I went and took a CDL test, passed it, got my CDL.
How long did that take to get your CDL and get
I
trained
did an
for it?
expedited process because
Yeah.
I was already pretty familiar with backing trailers and
Yeah.
things. So I did it in 3 days.
Nice.
Just
Okay.
it was pretty much a
You did a quick test, did a driver's test, and you were already.
they teach you.
Yeah.
They gave him years of experience
Right.
with his
Right.
dad's trucks.
Which is fair.
And they knew I was just doing it for the because we own the trucks,
Correct.
so I wasn't going to be a line haul
Yeah.
driver. So I didn't get approved with FedEx. I made sure that Amy and I talked about that situation, and we decided that it would be better if I didn't get approved for FedEx,
Yep.
so that I wasn't a
Tempted.
resource.
Yeah.
Because I would jump
yeah.
in and I would run.
Yeah.
Because that's just the nature of
Yeah, and it's how you did it. If your drivers were out and you'd been in there every day asking for something, you would just take it.
Sure.
Well, and it forces you to run the business
Yeah.
instead of cover,
Yeah.
right? When there's call-offs and things, it forces you to put more infrastructure in, to hire better,
'Cause you
to
don't have a
have better
choice.
employees, to get it, benefits, whatever that is, it's going to support that network that you're building instead of being the fall guy,
Yeah.
right? And it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
a hard decision because we don't fail.
Yeah.
Right? Slicker doesn't fail. We don't like to do that. I mean, it happens, but you know what I mean? That's kind of our philosophy. So it would have been very easy, like he said in the very beginning, when that one guy would call off sick, he would do the other P&D route.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for that mentality and that mindset, that entrepreneurial mindset to say, I'll cover it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do us any good.
Yeah.
When he's running all day and then has to cover something at night, it's just it's unsafe and not good for the business. So we
Yeah.
made that decision together, that he would be eligible to drive the tractor. So we would bobtail. If we had
Yep.
breakdowns, we would be the ones in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I could do it. I could
Yeah.
bobtail a tractor
But we just
out.
couldn't. He just couldn't haul trailers, and
Yeah.
that was it. Kept him in a safe BC.
It's some
role.
amount of contingency that you can provide, but
Yes.
not being a full-time driver, basically.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think when we were at 2 tractors, we purchased a spare just to have. And then if something would happen in the evenings, Amy and I would wake up or head out,
Yep.
and I would drive the tractor, and then I could wait with the tow to tow the other one back, or we kind of figured out how the tow network works on the highway, so we could leave it, and you have 24 hours to go recover it. So we could just drive it, and she would pick me up, and we could get back and then figure it out in the morning or whatever that looked like. But we keep the loads moving.
Okay. And how many people were running P&D and line haul at that time?
None. None that we knew of.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when we first after we bought when I came on, we went to a presentation, and FedEx had given us some numbers, and there were 120 or 117 in the whole country that did P&D and line haul, but none in our hub area.
Yeah.
So for us, this was all very...
There's nobody to talk to or ask questions.
No,
Yeah.
we were figuring it all out.
Well, we were talking.
Yeah.
We did have a really nice gentleman who was looking to retire, who kind of shepherded Dave along. It was nice. He could ask him questions. He didn't run his business the same way we did, though. So it was a lot of times it was like
Yeah.
getting the answer and going, okay, well, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But thank you for the information.
Sometimes it's just as good to hear an
really
answer and be like, okay, well, that's an option I can rule out. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a lot of that.
He was really helpful, though.
Yeah.
He was helpful
Yeah.
in the basic information. Then it allowed us to grow,
Yeah.
kind of, and shape it the way we wanted to.
Yeah. So we're at two dedicated runs. We get a call in October around Halloween.
Okay.
So end of October, there was a line haul contractor that owned a whole terminal of line haul,
Oh, wow.
and he was ready to call it quits.
Okay.
So put yourself at the end of October. Peak's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Our P&D trucks were ramping up. We have
Rentals.
rental trucks. We have
Yeah.
we're staffing.
All kinds of expenses. Yeah. That's the point. That's the point in the year where you've got none of the peak revenue
Sure. Yeah.
and all the peak expenses.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it sounds good to buy a whole chunk of routes, doesn't it?
And this contractor has 7 runs that he needs.
Oh, wow.
to
So you're
get rid
talking
of.
significantly bigger than already what you own. So it's not just like adding a little bit to what we have. It's
7
quadrupling in size in line
7
haul.
contracts and 11 drivers. And what condition were the trucks in?
They were rough. They weren't purchasable.
Yeah. Your Halloween surprise was looking at those vehicles and getting a jump scare.
It was yeah.
Yeah.
So I went out. I met with the contractor. We talked. We
Yeah.
wheeled and dealed a little bit. I told him I wasn't interested in his equipment. That I would buy all new equipment, and I would meet with the terminal manager, see if it was a good fit. Met with the terminal manager. He said, I think you can make this happen. So, Amy and I,
Terminal manager took a swing there too.
I think he had to.
Yeah.
We called Ryder.
So we called Ryder, and we bought 8, 9 trucks,
Yeah.
something like that.
It's not just the vehicles that are there. You got peak coming. So yeah.
So we needed trucks, and we needed to have the spares available to power it, and we needed drivers. He didn't have the strongest drivers, so that's
We actually still have 3.
Wow.
yeah. So
that's
that
great.
so that was 2017. 2017 we pulled that trigger. That it became a little bit much for me because I would dispatch one terminal, go to a second terminal. At this point, we're in 3 terminals.
Okay. Yeah.
I would go to the third terminal with line haul, and I would stay out there all day, and I would monitor the line haul operation. I would ride with drivers,
Yep.
and I would be present, and I would make sure that they had the support they needed. I could wrench on trucks if I needed to. I know just enough to get us by.
Yeah.
Right. I'm no mechanic. I'm not as good as a mechanic, but I can get us through the day, or help problem solve it to get us through the day. And and I would leave the terminal at 10 p.m. So I would leave at 6 a.m., leave at 10 p.m. I did it every single day of the week. Then on Saturdays, I would wake up and go out, just check the fleet over, and then kind of take
it all
Saturday. And then
again.
Sunday we were off. We would
Yeah.
Sunday, Monday, we were off. on
we would go to
P&D.
church,
Yep.
and then take Sunday for ourselves.
It was nice.
nice.
Tuesday
Yeah.
through Saturday was P&D, and we were just starting to get into. So around this time where he took on this huge, we literally stood up November 22nd, if you can imagine.
can't.
It was.
Yeah, I moved tractors on Thanksgiving.
It was so much. I mean, and they had actually given us some kind of leeway to get
Yeah.
tractors even onboarded because that process stops at peak as well. There's like a blackout. So
Yeah, oh, and for those who are listening who don't know, we keep saying peak, but it's really Black Friday is technically the starting point of peak,
Yeah.
and so you're talking about essentially the weekend
The weekend
before
of, correct.
the busiest week or period of weeks
Yes.
over the entire year. So
and
this
trying
is
to learn a new terminal and a new area
Yeah.
and new drivers and they were going to different hub areas so we had normally just done Toledo and Columbus, and now we're doing Toledo, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Hagerstown, Buffalo, and that's a stretch,
Yeah.
right? And we're just, now there's 2 or 3 terminals in Columbus, so we don't know which one they're going to, and it was a lot to manage. And right at that time, a contractor about almost 2 hours away from us and the P&D network was struggling. So we had sent teams down that Christmas to help, and contingency was a completely different animal. There were like flat day rates and absurd stop count.
Yeah.
I'm just, just come and deliver 20. I'm like, okay. There were no expectations and all the support they needed. And shortly after that, like literally we had people there from November, December. In May, Dave went to the terminal, just woke up dead out of a dead sleep and was like, I need to go down there. I'm like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
And he went down there and he's like, yeah, it's bad. He's like, I think I just hired 17 people. And I was like, what? And he's like, it's so bad here. He's like, we have to do something. He's like, people are asking me if they can sweep.
Oh my gosh.
It was so much turmoil. But it had opened up such an amazing contract opportunity for us, and the people down there it was such a blessing. But also, like, just him doing this kind of new thing. We're only now, 4 or 5 months into this bigger line haul operation, 11 runs, 3 terminals. And, now we have people in P&D. That contract's growing. It's probably 17, 18 people. And now we're managing 2 hours away, kind of a remote group of people. So enter me not working full time.
Dave's working every hour of the day, and realizing that there's something's got to give.
On Saturdays, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I just beat myself, and I did that. We did that for a while.
Yeah.
I would just be exhausted at the end of the week, but I knew I had to figure it out. So we had to see where it ended. But finally, it came to the point that Amy said, "Hey, I think we need to take a look at this and see." What direction are we going to continue to grow it? It's really, there's some opportunity here for us. And what do we do? Like, where can she fit?
Yeah.
And with being from corporate America, and she's really good with the people side.
You just put her in a line haul tractor.
We sent her
I got
for
my
a
CDL also. No, that was not part of the story.
No.
I can't reach the pedals.
So we knew she wasn't going to be a driving resource. So I needed help on the backside with the bills and the book work, things like that. Because when you're at a terminal every day, one of the hardest things to do is to sit down and write bills and
think about the business. Even
think about the business.
Write-ups, disciplinary. Watch watch any of the trends. I mean, my background was in statistics, but for us it was very difficult because I had a corporate executive level job with benefits.
Yeah.
So to step out of that security for our family into this, it's worked. I mean, everything he's touched so far has worked, right?
Yeah.
He's a very hard worker. He's very smart. He figures it out. He does the work. He's strategic in those ways. Like he said, he trades that kind of those 2 good but maybe capped out zip codes for a new underdeveloped zip code that he knows is going to boom. He just really had his finger on the pulse of all that all this time. So we had to the company had to offer benefits at this time, and we were just under 50 employees. We didn't have to.
Yeah.
But as we started growing, we kind of saw that happening with this acquisition of Cambridge in this kind of more rural terminal. We were seeing us get to that 45, 50, and it was going to happen pretty quickly. So that was scary in itself for me to kind of step out of that security.
Yeah.
And also, I had built quite a bit of success in my current career. So to be now, the paper lady, right?
Right.
And everybody said, "Oh, you're the payroll lady." I'm like, "Sure, I can be that." I'm like, "I don't care what you call me."
Yeah.
But it was, it was a lot of dynamic going on between us and kind of, what happens when this doesn't work. All of our eggs are kind of in this basket.
Yeah, it's a big bet, and you had to take it on yourselves, and that's,
and we had the diversification between the two,
but
right,
still,
which was good.
Yeah.
So one, it felt better. But it was a big challenge, and I think a lot of people that we talk to go through that same kind of growing pains, whether it's one P&D terminal or a new area. I went from 10 routes to 15 routes, and now my wife's helping, or I'm helping, or I got my son helping, or whatever that looks like. It's a story that I think a lot of contractors resonate with in their growth plan. So we had that. Ground overlap was coming, the one system. So everybody's outside trying to get service with the, there's no service in the terminal. They're all trying to get the downloaded maps and things like that. So there was so much technology. And then we came into compliance, right? So line haul, we needed lane departures, we needed cameras. So we actually ended up putting Lytx cameras in all of our P&D trucks a year before the mandate. So it was actually, and like I said, he's always been kind of on this pulse of what's right. And we've just been really fortunate that that's always worked out for us. But it was a huge expense. But not being able to keep our eyes on everybody and kind of getting spread thin, we really leaned on technology. And that was kind of compliance, audit, and marketing was kind of my shtick. Right? So it was kind of a really good time for us to come because it was internal marketing, external marketing as far as growth, positioning, and then just understanding the compliance and the statistics and the numbers behind how everything works. And that literally hit us. It was like boom, boom, boom. They offered us that contract in Cambridge. So that was our second P&D contract, and now 11 P&D trucks.
that was one area, and then a second area was added to it, and then a third area was added to that. So that contract was just
34 routes a day now.
That's 34 routes a day.
It's such a huge geography too. Like we just had a girl call this morning, and she has like an hour and 20-minute ride to her first stop. So when people we thought we had rural up north, and it was just like a couple country roads, and we had no idea what we were talking about. It's definitely a change.
So to get that on track, I switched gears. I then had the line haul. It was an hour from our house. I was monitoring that every day. We hired more of a mechanic style manager, but he could help do the dispatching. So he was focused more on mechanics. We bought him a mobile truck, and he would monitor kind of line haul. And I started to drive to this other terminal every day, and it's an hour and a half from our house. So I'd wake up in the morning and I would drive there, and I focused on that. So we focused on getting that on track. I could work. I could really spend the time at the terminals because I had Amy behind the scenes kind of monitoring the books, and she could help do some of the, to keep people on track. And then she started to pop in the terminals and check on drivers and build relationships with the drivers and the station management. And it kind of just worked because I could focus on where kind of the heavy hitters needed to be focused on.
It was when hiring also was done at the terminal.
Yes.
Oh, really?
First Advantage and that whole process. You had to go to the terminal and apply. You didn't have access at home. So I would have hiring days, and 4 or 5 people would come in and fill out these applications. So we did that, and I would kind of hire some people in this new terminal we were working in, and then doing the equipment and the trucks and the tires and kind of all the maintenance and everything that comes along with that, and line haul's still chugging in the background, and it's still growing, and we still have some opportunities. We're picking up some runs that maybe someone was awarded that's not running a lot, but we see a value in it. So we're buying some runs at that time. We're taking some drivers. We're adding trucks. We're just kind of chipping away as we're at everything. And then we get a call from a terminal we have line haul in, and they said, "Can you help us with some P&D stuff?" So we say, sure. Fire hose.
Jeez. So we moved some drivers out there to help, and sure enough, it becomes a growth opportunity for us. So we put some trucks on there, but we have line haul there too, so it works great. So then we can put some managers in place.
It gives you the scale.
Now we've also built some layers in here during this time frame. Amy and I have figured out a way we've hired a safety manager that manages any type of accidents. He's monitoring the vetters for us and alongside of me.
Having the conversations with the drivers.
He's having the in-person conversations with the drivers to make sure everybody's, fixing bad behaviors. And we're kind of ahead of the game because it hasn't been pushed out that it's a requirement, but we put the vetters in our line haul tractors because it was a requirement. And it was so successful for us that I said, there's no way we can't have it in our P&D trucks. So we implemented it early, and we just had to. It just made so much sense. The vetters help us more than they hurt us. So it was a no-brainer for us. It was a little bit of an expense, but totally worth it. I mean, for the savings that it's come across, it's totally worth it.
The interesting thing about the P&D in that contract, this last kind of opportunity that we were given, or not last, but the most recent one that he's talking about. So that was in a smaller terminal, but that's where we had that bigger chunk of line haul. So we're running maybe 11 drivers, 8 or 9 trucks out of that terminal. Again, we have a manager, line haul, dispatcher, and maintenance guy. So this is all moving very quick, smoothly but the P&D in that terminal was very much break even. It was a free opportunity, free growth opportunity. So we understood kind of what it was going to look like. It wasn't hurting us, wasn't really contributing at that point.
Yeah.
But if there was an accident or a breakdown, that was a big expense that it wasn't covering itself. But Dave really did see the benefit of not only having this small area that was kind of break even, but the ability to learn from it on the P&D and the line haul side, and how those two work together, and when something happens on line haul, how it affects P&D and vice versa. So when boxes aren't brought back, when a trailer doesn't come in, or there's cutoffs that are missed, there's so many pieces of this back end. So now he has this package handling, the switcher, he was a P&D driver, and now he has this all-in-one terminal, this relationship and these cause and effects that are happening. So it was really important for us to hang on to that. And then again, because it was free, any other contract, it's not really break even at that point, right? Because we didn't have to pay for that. It was just the investment in the trucks and the people. So we're kind of taking this as this is a good way to learn, like low exposure, super easy barrier to kind of jump into.
Yeah.
And this was in 2020, right during COVID. So throw that at you, right? So that was July of 2020. So there were all these rules and regulations. But if you think about what today looks like, last year in that same terminal, we went express. We were 6 days. Now we're folding out a couple more routes that are 7-day in the same terminal. Not all of them, but some of them. And they've now, just this month, carved out a section of a nearby terminal that they're redistricting into that terminal. So now we went from what was 9, maybe break-even routes to 15 express 7-day-a-week routes, which is the contract is now super profitable. So it's just that matter of, like I said, Dave kind of keeping his pulse, his thumb on the pulse of what's happening and doing things intentionally. Yeah. So sometimes it's not just like a 1 year in and you're like, well, that sucked, but to really lean in and see what that growth is going to look like. And now, you're looking at 4 full years later, we have, or almost 5 full years later, we have a bigger team, a manager and a supervisor, right? This kind of bigger infrastructure. And we've been able to go from being 3 years P&D to now a year full, almost 18 months, that were express overlap. Yeah. Which of course also came October 20th.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point though, is that like you can get really hyper focused on a, 12-month, 6-month, 1 month feel of the business of things aren't going great, there's this change that is making things impossible. But in, over these 20, 25 years that we're talking about here, there were so many of these moments. It's the constant with FedEx is that there's always change. There's always these little things that don't feel little at the time. They are, world shaking events in an industry, but they're blips on the timeline. But a lot of it comes in, we talk about these opportunities didn't just, they didn't just work. Part of it is when they're there, you have to be ready and be able to say yes, but then you have to be successful when you get them, because you guys were given a lot of tough opportunities over the years.
At the tough moments.
Yeah,
right? Like
and
October,
at hard
November.
moments, or at times of change in FedEx and the overall economy. They weren't easy times to take those steps. They weren't easy steps to take where you're having to bet on yourself and learn really new and hard things. So part of it is being willing to say yes, but the other part is you have to have the work ethic and the desire and learn from whoever you can to be successful as you do it. And I think you guys are a testament to the fact that there are going to be very, difficult moments over these years. It's not going to, if there's anything we can tell from the past is that there's going to be more of those. Sure. There's going to be more opportunities, but there's also going to be more of these changes. We're going through a time right now where there's express and all of that opportunity, but also all of those challenges. And I think you guys have seen a lot of that.
A lot of it is credit to our managers too. They support us. Whatever how crazy the idea sounds. They say, okay, we'll support it.
Conversation. We're short 2 drivers, but we need to take on 5 new zip codes. They're like, okay.
but they help.
For the ride.
Yeah.
And they know that we can trust them. So we can go, to this other terminal and get started there, hands-on. And what we already have won't lose any power that it's kind of built over the years.
And you could say that is a testament to your managers, but that's also a testament to your hiring and the culture you built to create those managers in a way where they can continue to go with you where you need them to go.
Yeah. What's career pathing for us too, which is huge. We had a shift in our business years ago where our focus, Dave coming from a very small town, like any other entrepreneur, it's like, I'm going to make $1 million, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to get out of this town. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to become something.
Come back to my 40-year high school reunion and rub it in their face. Yeah, exactly.
But it wasn't, it was that for a while, just him kind of grinding. And that's why it took him, taking those opportunities. It was very future focused and security based. Coming from a small town with not a ton of opportunity, he wanted to create that security for our family, for himself, and build this business. And right around that time where we were growing into line haul and taking on these new terminals, a switch changed. We had leaned very heavily into our faith and changed, and it really became about the people. And the money and the finances and the security came after we put people first. So a lot of these opportunities have created our drivers to become managers, or our drivers to become senior managers. Our GM was a driver, the safety manager, and now he's the general manager of all things Slicker, right? Over the maintenance shop, the tow truck, everything. So it's just, it allows us to bring people alongside of us. And if you don't continue to grow, those opportunities don't exist. Or if you don't start getting creative and kind of leaning into the compliance. So it was hard for us to take on some of this compliance and these audits and some of the new regulations and these changes that we talk about. But when you can put someone on it, right, and give them a little, even if they're a driver, we have right now supervisors that are peer drivers. So they're supervising, but they're taking on tire audits and iPad audits and training audits and things like that. And it just gives them a little bit more, and they can step in if there's another growth opportunity. And we're like, well, I'm not going to run it and you're not going to run it. Who's running it? Right? And we can lean on some of these people that we've groomed, not just from the best driver standpoint, right? Because that's where businesses typically struggle, is they put the best driver in charge, but really groom these people from a culture standpoint of how we want you to, how we want you to lead like us, how we want you to treat people, how we expect you to treat our customer, right? And that we say yes, right, to the customer. And that's, I think if you can see a common thread through this, Dave leaning in has really proven to be a successful model for us, even when it's been scary or untimely or expensive. It's been, it's been a lot. And back before financing was even available for FedEx contractors, it was a lot, because it was a lot of like, whew, well, that's what we have in the bank. So there it is. It was easy to get truck loans, but not, any type of other equipment loans. And now it's just so easy. Not super easy, but it's more easier. It's much more readily available with the great partners that are out there in the financing network. So
how large are you guys today? What are you at now?
194 trucks. We have 43 line haul trucks, and the rest of them are all cargo van to P1200. We have about 204 employees, and I would say probably between 193 and 197 on payroll every week. And whether that's vacation, one of the crazy stats that we do talk about is this year we have over 1,200 days of PTO. Wow. So when we talk about turnover, which we're not immune to, we have our struggles and we have waves. Right now we're actually struggling through a wave of change in one of our terminals. But the bottom, it's usually like the bottom 2 to 4% that we're turning over quite a bit. But we have people that have been with us, 10, 12 years. I think our average right now is 3.25 years,
wow, that's really
which is
high.
huge, over 200 people. And that obviously dips as you grow and you need to lean in and, fund a whole new terminal with new people or new growth opportunities. But it's a super cool thing. But, you're only allowed to give that in 6 months out of the year. Nobody wants to take it when it's cold in Ohio, and you're not allowed to take it at peak. So literally trying to find 1,200 days of vacation between April and, in Ohio, you're looking at like September, right? So it's challenging, but it's a good growing pain to have. But those are some statistics that have definitely changed the game for us.
And how do you kind of feel about yourselves as contractors today? If you were to think about, how you're viewing the space, how you're viewing like helping other contractors, where do you find yourselves today versus when you went through this mental journey of all of the things you've gone through over the years?
Well, I think about it like when we were just starting, and I went to the guy that was there for 10 years before me.
Yeah.
And I thought he was like the smartest guy in the world because he had been through so much. And I think just by sharing our experiences, if we can help some of these newer contractors just kind of navigate the space smarter, maybe. Yeah. Because we messed up. I mean, we've messed up a lot. So we've had some really tough times. Yeah. But if we can help navigate to keep that, at the end of the day, we want the market to stay strong across the United States, because the same customers coming to us are the same ones getting delivered in California. So we need that to stay strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for us too, just being able to share, there's so much negativity just in the world in general, but when it comes to contracting and, them versus us, or, a tough terminal manager or a tough owner, or people leave, or whatever that looks like, it can get very daunting sometimes. And then you get hit with, oh, and by the way, your, PPOD is terrible, or some sort of, statistic that you need to, metric that you need to meet is not on the board. And you're like, oh my gosh, I was watching what was going over here. Totally didn't even see what was supposed to be happening over here. So it's a lot of things to manage. So I think if we can share the things that we've put in place, and we have the layers and the structure, but if we can kind of say, like, this is how we do it, but if we didn't have managers to do it, this is how we would do it, so that we can manage easier, and I think just that sharing of information, it's also quite a bit of our faith and our path to lift others up and to share, and to come alongside of people that are struggling, or people that just want to grow or get bigger or have the same path. Like, I want to give my kid this business in 10 years, and what does that look like with everything that's going on with me right now, or it's going on in the industry. So to provide a little encouragement and hope, that it is not easy, right? It's easier, it gets easier, but it's not, it's not, we have a lot of pieces, in the everyday. My phone's off. I can't even imagine what's happening. But it takes a lot of siloing, your work and coming alongside of people. So we're super thrilled about the opportunity and to take time, at some of the expos and conferences to meet people that are doing what we're doing. Yeah,
yeah, and we appreciate it. I think the most important thing in this space right now, from a way we can all help each other, is telling stories just like this and finding ways to come together to be successful. Because just like you talked about, when you were starting out, it felt like you were the only people in your terminal, and you were the only people in your terminal who had done some of that before. And so there are pockets of that all over the country where people are in a terminal with few people, or maybe everybody's new at the terminal, and finding a way to tell how you can be successful, even if it's not the way they decide to do it. Like you guys learned from some of your others. Knowing ways that it can be done and thinking about if that's the right path for you, or if there's some things you can take from it to be successful, is how ultimately all contractors in the network learn to get better. And, the rising tide lifts all ships. And I think that's the goal of this and these types of stories. Yeah. So I really appreciate both of you being here, telling your story, being willing to help contractors and others who are trying to figure out if this is the right space for them, or if they can be successful in the space as they're in it. So the last question I always ask of people, I'll give you the choice: favorite movie, TV show, or book. And it could be favorite today. I won't make you say favorite of all time, because sometimes that's the hardest question. Yeah.
Mine's Secretariat.
Oh, really?
Love the movie.
Man, I haven't seen that movie
in
years.
It is definitely one. It was actually funny on the plane last night. It popped up as one of the Southwest favorites, and I was like, oh, I should watch this again. I just do. It's such an uplifting story. Yeah. I think for me, because it's about women empowerment as well, and kind of navigating an industry that is not typically welcoming of women.
Which is an experience you're familiar with.
Yeah. So yes, I've walked into a room and kind of been like, oh, you're just the wife. I'm like, I am, or I'm not the AO.
Yeah.
I get that quite a bit because
Yeah.
Dave's the AO of all of our contracts from P&D to line haul to custom critical even. So I'm just a BC. I'm kind of like the payroll lady in the background. But it's such a cool story about, overcoming obstacles and having faith. And so it's a cool story. Yeah.
I don't have anything that interesting like she does.
It's like Tommy Boy.
It was great. Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah.
I would say I get yelled at maybe for it, but I'm a YouTuber. Like I love to watch YouTube videos. So
it's my wife's. Her biggest regret is she got me YouTube Premium.
I have YouTube Premium.
Can never give it up.
It's always in my office. It's always playing in the background, and I like to watch hunting videos.
Yep.
So I swear I've watched every hunting video on YouTube. And anyone that comes to my office, they always joke because they whisper. So there's always it's like golf and hunting.
I can't take the whispering.
So
I was about to say Amy's probably also seen more hunting videos than she ever wants to.
Yes. So we watch them on YouTube. It's always playing in the office.
Our youngest son is really into it too. So I really can't.
You can't get upset. Yeah.
So that's always on the TV.
That's awesome. Perfect. All right. Well, again, thank you both for being here. And again, I appreciate everything you all are doing for the contractor community.
Thanks for having us.